Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. Well, the inevitable has happened. Oko has been given the go-ahead to get on up out of standard. So this beautiful background of mine here, this is going to be the last time we're going to be using this for a while, because I imagine Oko's not going to come up in discussion for a fair bit of time. Speaking of discussion, we have a lot to talk about today with the banned and restricted announcements that have happened. We're talking about 5 different cards being banned, spanning 4 different formats. This is a lot. There's a lot going on. So let's dive right in. We're going to talk about the different cards that are banned and talk about Wizards' reasoning here. I've got the article. We're going to go through all that, starting out with obviously Oko. We're going to talk about the standard bans first. So Oko, Once Upon a Time, and Veil of Summer, all getting that ban hammer. Now, the announcement starts out standard. Over the past several weeks, the standard metagame has been in an unhealthy state. Really? Really? So we're taking significant steps to rectify it. The 2 major issues are the dominance of Simic-based food decks featuring Oko Thief of Crowns and the general overrepresentation of green in the competitive metagame. Food decks featuring Oko Thief of Crowns have been the most popular and most winning for the majority of the Throne of Eldraine standard season. This culminated with almost 70% of decks at Mythic Championship Richmond, including the card. Based on data from high-ranked Arena traditional best of 3 play, only one of the other 10 most played decks, Simic Flash, had a favorable matchup against Simic-based food decks. You literally had to play green-blue. That was the only thing you could play in standard, and only just above 50%. Food decks maintained an average of about a 53% non-mirror match win rate, even with the metagame focused on beating them. Oko Thief of Crowns has also reduced metagame diversity and diversity of gameplay in standard by shutting off build-around creatures and artifacts. Ultimately, Oko's power level has proven higher than is healthy for the current metagame and higher than intended for future environments, including Theros, Beyond Death, and Forward. So this is a way of them saying, look, we completely messed up with Oko. We didn't realize how stupidly powerful he was going to be, and nothing coming in Theros or other sets that are entering standard would really be enough to keep Oko from regaining dominance, even if we banned cards around him. The green push is going to continue, I imagine. We'll talk about that in a little more detail after we go through the announcement. To address green's general dominance, we're also choosing to remove Once Upon a Time and Veil of Summer from the environment. Alongside Oko, Once Upon a Time is one of the key reasons green has been overrepresented in the environment. It contributes to a high consistency of strong starts and provides a level of early mana fixing that other colors do not have access to. This advantage is especially important in the context of a small 5-set standard card pool with less flexible mana bases. Arena data indicates that without also removing Once Upon a Time, green decks would still continue to be too powerful and consistent going forwards. Once Upon a Time is a pretty solid enabler in terms of digging through for lands or particular creatures. Whatever you're missing from your starting hand, Once Upon a Time can find it. And when you combine that with the London Mulligan, it's leading to some real issues with trying to combat the power that green is bringing to the table. Pretty interesting to see how much green has grown in strength. Speaking of green, let's continue with the announcement. Finally, Veil of Summer is also playing an important role in preventing the metagame from being able to self-correct. Cards that played similar roles in the past, like Autumn's Veil and Display of Dominance, proved a lower power level than desired in their respective standard environments, leaving green with a weaker option compared to the other color hate cards in those cycles. Veil of Summer is at the other end of the spectrum. It's too much more efficient than the other cards in its cycle, and by comparison to other tools available in standard, it gives green too much resilience against removal and disruption. You have to have a lot of mana to fight against something like the Veil of Summer. Because if you go to play, let's say, a creature destruction spell or a counter spell, all I have to do is pay 1 green mana. I can stop your creature destruction spell or your counter spell, and then to respond to that, you're going to need enough mana to cast before it resolves. Because once that spell resolves, for the rest of the turn, you can't do anything. You get shut down. So you have to have enough mana to respond to Veil of Summer. Veil of Summer is going to basically chew up multiple cards in this regard and eat a lot of your opponent's mana, and all for 1 mana while letting you draw a card to replace it. It really is a very, very powerful card. We actually saw it get hit with the ban hammer in Pioneer last week, and we probably actually are going to see some more Pioneer ban action later today. So that'll be interesting to see. Continuing on, we believe these changes are necessary and sufficient to open up the standard metagame to a much higher degree of diversity, and the resulting environment going forward will more closely match design intent. And basically, when it comes to these sort of events in Arena with this kind of banning, there are a few things you need to know. First of all, the Arena ban took place immediately. So unlike with Field of the Dead, where you had the opportunity to go and spend some wild cards to grab the Field of the Dead before the ban took effect in a few days, so you could just go, I'm going to grab Fields of the Dead, and then you get the wild cards, basically making it so that you've already got a play set of them for free without having to do any work, which I thought was a nice little bonus that came along with bannings. Well, Wizards didn't like that, so they changed it so that the banning on Arena will happen right away. Or either that, or they just thought Standard has been so brutalized that they didn't want to wait the 4 days. Like, this goes into effect in about 4 days for Paper Magic. But for Arena, it was instantaneous. So if you log into Arena, you will find you've already been given wild cards to replace any Okos or anything like that you have. So unlike the previous time with Field of the Dead, where I told you to go and get the cards because you would get wild cards, do not use that method this time, because you'll still be able to craft those cards, but they'll be banned and you won't be given any wild cards. So bear that in mind. The bans are instantaneous on Arena and MTGO when it comes to these standard bans. Moving on to Brawl, Oko has been banned in Brawl. And it's a really simple statement here. For similar reasons outlined in the standard discussion, and to bring Tabletop and Arena Brawl into alignment, Oko is now banned in Tabletop Brawl. So he was already banned in Brawl on Arena, even though you can only play it once a week. That was such a weird banning. Anyhow, across the board, Oko's not available in Brawl. And that makes sense. If you're going to ban something from Standard, you may as well ban it from Brawl as well. Moving on to the Legacy format, we have Wrenn and 6 from Modern Horizons. Modern Horizons has been a very disruptive set in terms of muddling up multiple formats. We are seeing the effect of just throwing crazy cards out there. Wizards has been pushing the power level a lot, and a lot of the transgressors are in the green category, which is not normally what we see. But anyways, Wrenn and 6 is banned in Legacy. The article says, since their adoption of Wrenn and 6, Temur Delver variants have become dominant in Legacy. In Magic Online League play over recent weeks, Delver has maintained a 56.5% win rate and earned over 3 times as many 5-0 finishes as the next best deck. Most importantly, it has a favorable matchup against each of the other 10 most played decks. So it's just the winningest deck by a long stretch. While a strong card in general, Wrenn and 6 is especially powerful in Legacy because of its interaction with Wasteland. And Wasteland is, for those of you who don't know, it's a land you can use to destroy a non-basic land. Basically, tap and sack it, destroy target non-basic land, which is pretty much the entire mana base in Legacy, right? So it's incredibly strong land disruption. And with the historic prevalence of metagame defining 1 toughness creatures like Mother of Runes, Thalia, Guardian of Throbbin, and Young Pyromancer. So Wrenn and 6 can lay waste to their mana base, it can lay waste to their early game creatures, and it's incredibly cheap to put out, right? Like, Wrenn and 6 is incredibly, incredibly cheap to cast. Prior to the addition of Wrenn and 6 to Temur Delver decks, the Legacy metagame was generally looking healthy. Oh, I'm dying here. In order to weaken Delver decks and bring the metagame into better balance again, Wrenn and 6 is banned in Legacy. And we also have a change in Vintage as well. I mean, Wrenn and 6 is gross. Like, if we stop and look at Wrenn and 6, that card was a mistake. Not only does it let you grab back Wastelands, but it's also amazing with fetch lands too, right? You can just keep recycling your fetch lands over and over. So you can disrupt your opponent's mana, you can mana fix yourself, you can destroy your opponent's creature, plus Wrenn and 6's ultimate is dirty dumb. Once you get to the point where you get to ultimate, it's going to be pretty hard for your opponent to keep up with the insane amount of advantage you have. Advantage. I don't know if I just said vantage. I got a lot of vantage, yo. All right, vintage, vantage, vintage. So in vintage, we have Narset. Narset, partner of Veils, the uncommon planeswalker from War of the Sparks, has caught the hammer. Following up on recent changes to the restricted list and the results of Eternal Weekend North America 2019, we're making one additional change. In context of the fast mana and efficient card draw available in Vintage, Narset, partner of Veils, is contributing to one-sided games at a higher degree than is healthy. In order to reduce the frequency at which an early Narset static ability soft locks the opposing player to the game, Narset is restricted. Narset, the key thing about Narset is that Narset says you can't draw more than one card a turn to your opponent. It doesn't affect you. You go, I can draw all that I want. Vintage has all kinds of old, crazy, broken, dumb card draw, right? It has a ton of stuff that's been restricted. They use a ton of different blue card draw abilities in that format. And getting out of Narset right away goes, watch me go full Nova while you can't do anything. It's basically like being able to take the engine out of your opponent's card. We're going to drag race, but hold on. Let me just open up the hood, take out your engine, get wrecked. Like that is the level that Narset operates at. And you think to yourself, well, it's 3 mana, but we're dealing with a vintage, right? Vintage is like, say hello to dumb moxes and all kinds of other stuff that can accelerate out a Narset as fast as first turn, where it's like, go first, Narset, get wrecked. So it does actually make perfect sense to see Narset getting banned. Now for me, one of the most interesting parts about all the bannings that are going on is 4 of the cards are green. 4 green cards got banned and a blue card got banned. Normally, the problem colors in Magic tend to be blue and, well, I guess we're not colors, colorless. Colorless is actually one of the biggest problems for Magic the Gathering, or at least it was. We've entered a brave new world where green's the bad guy? I'm used to blue always being the bad guy. I mean, if you go all the way back to Vintage and like the older formats, blue is still very, very powerful. And the funny thing about Wrenn and 6 is Wrenn and 6 actually is dominant in what is essentially you would consider a blue deck too. So blue, when it comes to old school Magic, is definitely king. But it seems like green has been beefing up and going, you know what, it's time. I'm tired of sitting in the corner. I'm about to take the spotlight, son. I'm about to keep things kicking. So I lived back in the day when green was like a side color that maybe you would splash. It's kind of interesting to see how much green's having to get hammered. And I've heard theories being trotted around that maybe Wizards of the Coast did some research and found out that a lot of beginners like to play with green. Green has a sort of pure simplicity to it, right? Where you go, all right, man, this is good. Just punch, eat 'em, boys. Like, that's the level of green, where you don't have too much subtlety. It's very straightforward. So it may be that Wizards is pushing the power of green specifically to give beginners a more like righteous first experience to hook them and get them into the game. I don't know if that's true or not, but we are seeing a lot of green bans. I mean, in terms of all these bans, I'm on board with all of them. Oko definitely needed to go. Once Upon a Time is essentially a free impulse effect, right? I mean, yes, you don't only get to do that if it's your first spell, but a lot of the time, that's really dirty. When you move around casting costs, like when you move outside of using the casting cost as a balancing measure, you can run into problems. And Once Upon a Time is also just kind of annoying when you're playing an arena, when someone has one in their hand and you're going first and you're like, can you click the button? Can I go through my turn, please? The game knows you can cast this for 0 and you're not doing it. Can you just like skip the turn or whatever so I can play the game? Although that obviously isn't criteria really for banning a card overall, but it is just a side note. Once Upon a Time, I play green. I like Once Upon a Time. I had a playset in multiple decks, but I totally see why I need to go. It smoothed things out too much, too easily at the very beginning of the game with no mana investment. It makes your mulligan decisions way easier with the London Mulligan because you've got that. And if you have it in your starting hand and it's free, it essentially extends your hand's options by up to 5 more cards, which is a crazy amount. It's not quite doubling the size of your starting hand pool, but it gets close. So I can understand why they banned that. Veil of Summer is too much value for 1 mana and it completely hoses too many decks. So again, makes perfect sense to get rid of that. I mean, Oko's busted. There's no real reason to sit there and go, oh, you know, maybe Oko would be all right to leave. So getting rid of him in Brawl 2 makes perfect sense. Wrenn in 6, yup, that card's really stupid, real easy. And Narset, yeah, I mean, it removes a lot of interactivity in a format that already has interactivity issues, because it's like, hey, I'm just going to win the game like right away because we're playing the craziest kind of Magic. So overall, an interesting ban announcement. We're gonna have to retire this background until Oko comes back in some form. I guess maybe if he gets a Pioneer ban, who knows? Maybe I'll be doing another video about him today. That'd be funny. Anyhow, that also means we're going to be retiring the 3/3 elk gear. I do have in my merch shop Oko themes. So if you want to commemorate this moment when Oko himself got elked, now you're the Oak Elko. If you want to commemorate that with some nice 3/3 elk action, go on down to the description down there. I've got my merchandise linked. Get yourself something as a nice remembrance of it. I've already had multiple people pick it up. I'm going to throw up some pictures here. One is a picture of Bo Falcon being all sad that he's been turned into a 3/3 elk. And the other a picture from James P. with the banners that he's purchased from my merchandise shop to hang at conventions. It's very cool to see merchandise associated with me on people and out in the world. Because I'm just some regular everyday guy who goes blah, 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 blah about cardboard rectangles on the internet. So I appreciate all of the wonderful support. Again, get your elk merch because it is going away. This is limited time. Now that Oko's been banned in standard and the memes are over, I would say this merch will be only available for a couple more days and then it will be delisted forever, unless, I mean, something crazy happens where it's like, check it out, they brought Oko back into standard. That's not gonna happen. So, anyways, grab it while you can. Thanks for coming by, everybody. Let me know your thoughts about all of these bannings in the comment section below, because I'm interested in your thoughts, and it helps my channel. Speaking of channels, I have a second channel where I do very funny videos. You're invited to come by and hang out. I love that channel very, very much. So, big shout out to all of the people who support me over on Patreon and my channel members. Thanks for supporting my work, and I will see all of you tomorrow. Remember, together we are the 6th color of magic.